Now, a few weeks ago, our 2024 updated leadership course premiered to a class of 6 inaugural students. Let's show a copy of the agenda for the new leadership course. That's the agenda, fantastic. And so, the topics were one, what is the leadership, what is leadership at SMA, mission, vision, purpose, culture, and values, strategy and operations, of course. How do you, as an associate, lead at SMA? Basically that's about what is my contribution and how do I manage myself. The third big topic is leading through influence, which is what all of us have to do at clients.
Yep.
And 4 is how to have productive conversations and the importance of the client's journey with SMA.
So the implication there is I can't take my shoe off banging on the table and just demand.
Not like the 80s.
Not like the 80s. The good old days.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, actually, this is a very exciting development of our training program. So let's hear from the various associates who attended the full 2-day event. How about we start with our very own data analytics analyst, Blake Hernandez. His favorite part of the class was a selection on my personal leadership and what is my contribution, which is a great topic, actually.
Yep. And here's actually a workbook from Peter Drucker's book on managing oneself.
That's right. That's right.
Yep.
So Blake's second selection of the class was productive teams and productive conversations. That's a great topic, which includes influence without authority. This was a topic that Barry Draskovich from Parker said was an essential skill during the town hall last week.
He did.
Yep.
That's right. It was a pretty important part of his talk.
Yep.
So now here's Blake's testimonial about the leadership class. My participation in the SMA leadership program was transformative, aligning my personal goals with the organization's mission and vision. The sessions on self-management and influence taught me how to navigate challenges and engage effectively with team members. This training motivated me to approach challenges with a fresh perspective and foster stronger relationships.
So now I'd like to invite Shane Thompson to share his thoughts on the course. Hey Shane, how you doing? What are some of your takeaways?
I really love the course. It was very engaging. It was very, very interesting. It was the course, the way it's designed, is very interactive and collaborative. I think one of the things I appreciated most was that the other SMA team members were there, different experiences. They come from different parts of the industry or different divisions with SMA, different levels of experience. And it was interesting just as get the seasoned veterans as it was the new associates to hear, how this applied to them, their experiences, the scenarios they dealt with. But it really forced you kind of recontextualize and reassess your approach to leadership. I was during the course, I was literally able to apply it real time to a meeting and an effort that I'm leading at Parker to talk about a system implementation. So we used that as a real world example. Bernie was great. So I felt very fortunate to be able to attend.
Excellent. So I understand also that you shared many important examples from your client engagements. You just mentioned the one. Any thoughts on that? I mean, what you just said was that you thought that was important to the course. I imagine others did the same.
Yeah, it did. So with the integration we have going on with Megit, there's a lot of opportunities to have leadership meetings on just about every facet under the sun. So I took some of the constructive exercises that we did and some of the concepts. I applied them to the meetings. Specifically, the one I'm thinking of is our project online integration, which I desperately needed it for. And it really helped to facilitate those conversations and achieve the goals that I was looking to make happen.
That's awesome. Well, it's always nice when you can take something back to your desk immediately and put it to use.
Absolutely.
So, hey, thanks, Shane. I really appreciate your comments here. And Scott Keeney also participated. Scott, what were some of your takeaways from the course?
Hey, Jacques. Hey, AJ. Yeah, thank you so much for letting me join that leadership session. It was great. Love the way Bernie ran it. Thought he did a great job keeping it moving and keeping it kind of fun and fresh. What I took away was really the theme of reflection. Getting caught up in client engagements and the work there. You don't often get to reflect on SMA's mission and strategy overall, and kind of how I fit in my contribution both to the client as well as SMA within the SMA organization. So that was great to kind of have a retrospective there and just get a chance to take all that in with Bernie and the other attendees. There were tons of great interactive breakout sessions, like Shane said. My particular favorite was when we discussed team design and makeup. And that really drilled down for me into making sure we have the right design in the team, making sure everyone has psychological safety, and how that team fits into the SMA mission, to adding value to our clients. And that applied directly to my current client engagement at Parker, because there's tons of different personalities, just like every engagement, and keeping projects moving, keeping teams moving through influence. That was really helpful.
Well, yeah, and I know you've worked on a lot of different interesting clients like VFC and Haynes, and you're in the process, which had interesting personalities and project dynamics. You're also kicking off an initiative right now that I will venture to guess that this training will be very useful and helpful to you.
It already has. Yes, sir.
Excellent, excellent. Hey, Scott, thank you very much.
Thank
Now
you.
let's ask Lexi to show us a few video clips from the actual class.
Awesome.
Let it roll.
Hey, thank you everyone for attending, especially since this is the very first training class that we're offering, and the topic is leadership, which has been just always such a core aspect of who we are as SMAers. So let me introduce to you our main instructor, Professor Bernie Jaworski. Bernie is the chair, the Drucker Chair at the Drucker School of Management, so actually the Peter F. Drucker Chair at the Drucker School of Management, which is one of the graduate schools at the Claremont Graduate University, the SMA way. All right. Now, Bernie's written an excellent book on MVPVC. It's an unpronounceable acronym, as many are in our industry. Mission, vision, purpose, values, and culture.
The issue that's interesting as you think about everything that AJ profiled, particularly values and culture, is to be able to have conversations about what behaviors are consistent with those values and what behaviors are inconsistent. So in other words, what does it not mean? So let's just take one for a second. Courage to offer advice and take action. There's a very specific word choice here, which is courage.
Mm-hmm.
From my perspective, when I hear the word courage, what it says is, I'm putting myself at personal risk. That's what courage is. So the idea would be, I'm going to say something to the client they may not want to hear, but I believe it's the right choice and the right action for them to take. That would take courage. It doesn't take courage to say to the client, the client's already thinking about X, and you tell them, hey, X, that doesn't take courage. But if the client's thinking X and you're saying that's actually the wrong choice for the following 3 reasons, that's taking courage.
All right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about Todd and what Todd means to the organization. AJ likes to say all the time, it's the operating system of the business, right? It literally is the way we do everything here, from hire to retire, from paying people, from doing expenses, from interacting with clients. And that's why it's also important to keep your availability up, because there's nothing worse than when a client goes into the platform, they get excited about somebody because they've got all the right capabilities, and then we have to tell them, I'm sorry, Jacques on vacation this week, or oh, I'm sorry, Jacques just got booked on another job, right? That we don't want to have those conversations with clients. What we want to get to is, the conversation we want to have is, do you want them there on Friday or on Monday, right? And of course, this is Thursday afternoon when we're having the conversation. So that's the kind of stuff that we want to get to. So your availability calendar is important. The other thing is that for each of you, we've made it simple to know exactly what projects you've worked on. Todd, if we deploy you, Todd puts that into your profile. So really and it knows what role you had. It knows all of the things about the project except for, what was the magic you brought to that program, to that project, and that you need to describe in your impact statement. And by doing that, you're not only helping us find you your next gig, but you're also helping us with our past performance as a firm to develop up more opportunities and to attract talent, which allows us to scale. And that's why those things are critical.
So what we want to do today is walk through a process to think about team creation and team management. And so step one is you got to be able to think about what is the right design for our team. So the team must have the necessary technical skills. We must have the ability to kind of work together. So we need the interpersonal communication skills. We need people that actually fit the overall purpose, fit for purpose here in terms of the right people on the team. Diversity is actually a lot of academic literature on the role of diversity. Think of it as the minority viewpoint that you have that actually leads the team to get to a better solution. Actually, Drucker always argued that whenever you had team discussions, you always wanted to have somebody who took the devil's advocate view, the minority point of view, to really strengthen the view of the majority and to test the view of the majority, right? So teams must have a supportive context and a set of ways to work together where we know that we can actually make some mistakes along the way and we're going to get support in terms of how it is that we do things. We have to size the team appropriately. Sometimes teams are too small and sometimes they're way the hell too large. We have to have very clear goals, but are achievable. And how we structure the team needs to be fit to the particular task that we have in front of us. There's different forms of teams that are out there. If you think about baseball teams, but you have the right fielder who's out doing their role. They have very fixed positions. They rarely leave. There's not necessarily a lot of interaction between the right fielder and the third baseman. Periodically, there's a hit into the right field, and the person has to pick it up and throw it to the other person. But it's not a highly coordinated action, right? Individuals can actually perform very, very well on their own, and we can have a very productive situation. For a symphony, it's a little bit different because the individuals have to subordinate themselves to the team. They do have fixed positions. You're playing the violin, you're playing the tuba, got that? But they have to work in an integrative way. What you want is the overall integration to have the impact that we're having, as opposed to individuals standing out. The only way it's going to work is they play in concert with one another. Now, what's interesting is in tennis, if you take a look at, for example, doubles, there are very clear ways in which teams kind of need to work together. Both team members can be at the net at the same time. Both team members can be back. If the ball goes into the air into the center of the court, people might call it and switch positions. So somebody may be on the right side of the court, somebody may be on the left side. But the key here is the ability to actually coordinate. Same thing is true of sort of jazz improv, very different than symphony, right? Because you're basically listening to each other and you're trying to figure out where is this going, and you need to kind of modify kind of as you go. Same thing is true of improv comedy, actually, in terms of understanding kind of where that goes. So the point is, you need to be thinking about what type of team do we have in place here, because the different teams operate differently, have different norms, have different ways of sort of operating, and who the right members are going to be a function of the choice of what team you're on. So one of the interesting topics that we're going to be talking about in our program here is influence without formal authority. And this is something AJ and Jock and I talked about sort of multiple occasions around thinking through. In many of our situations, we don't have formal authority. We can't dictate the choice. It has to be something that's negotiated, discussed, and worked through with the client. So I want to talk, as I mentioned earlier, that there's two phases to this process. The first is simply the foundation of trust, and this is based upon Meister's work in managing professional services firms. And second is I'm going to talk about influence in a very specific context. But usually trust is a result of multiple interactions with a client over a period of time. You've got to establish credibility, which I'll talk about. You have to establish reliability. Reliability here is delivering a very high mean level of performance with very low variation around that mean over a period of time. Third is a level of intimacy with the client, where the client is willing to open up around problems and issues inside of their organization that they typically would not express unless they're actually have a sense of confidence in your ability to hold that information in close confidence and your ability to kind of think carefully through that problem with them. So I'm not talking about intimacy in a social context or interpersonal, but intimacy in a business context. And then finally, there's this concept of a deep belief that the client actually believes that you're operating in their best interests. So you're not operating in your own best interest. You're really fundamentally operating in their best interest. So let's talk about this notion of contribution and what is Drucker talking about here. So from Drucker's perspective, what are the steps that you need to do to complete this process? So the very first thing every employee of SMA needs to do is to sit back and think, what is the overall mission? And what can I do individually to help support the achievement of that mission? So that's step one. Step two is, if that is the overall mission, what can I do to contribute to that mission, given my skill set, given my strengths, given what I'm good at? The second question is, what can I do to contribute to my unit success, given the overall mission of SMA and given my strengths? How do I make my boss or my unit successful? The third issue then is, how do I contribute to my peer success? So if I'm working in a team context, in a group context, what do I do to help make my peers successful? And vice versa, what do I need from my peers on that engagement for me to be successful, right? So this should be an explicit conversation about what do they need and what do I need to be successful. And then finally, if you do have direct reports, you should be asking the question, how do I contribute to my direct report success? All of what we're talking about is this notion of having a productive conversation. So how do we think about this? Well, it's kind of a three-step process. First is understanding and framing where the other person is coming from. Do I understand how they're thinking about the problem or issue at hand? And do I understand my context, my belief, my situation? The second issue we need to think through is, what do we do to act? Any good conversation is going to balance some level of inquiry and advocacy. And the ability to inquire correctly, the ability to have active listening, the ability to observe what's unfolding, the ability to ask clarifying questions is actually quite important. And all of this unfolds in both a verbal and nonverbal context. And then finally, what are the results? What is the impact on the task at hand? Did I actually move the needle on the thing that we're concerned about here? What is the quality of learning that unfolds? And what's the nature of the relationship that I have after engaging in that particular interaction? So we're going to map a client journey. Okay, that's what we're going to do. So what I want to do now is take us through the steps to complete the process. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to map the steps of the overall client journey. We're going to identify touch points, both table stakes and delights at each stage. We're going to select one segment, and this is really quite important because one big takeaway is you always do the mapping at the segment level. So different clients cluster together in certain ways. I know we tend to think of ourselves as B2B, and there's a certain number of clients, and every client is a customer of one. That's not true. Yes, we do have clients where our customers are one, but they typically aggregate into different segments. I mean, not that I know your market in excruciating detail, but certainly one way to think about our segments would be large, classical players in the world of defense and aerospace, the big 3 or 4, and they operate a particular way. In contrast to the newer guys that are unconstrained by reality, and they're very agile, they're very tech-oriented, they kind of do their own thing, they operate a particular way. They may not follow the rules of convention of what the big guys do, but they see themselves as nimble, agile, quick, right? Different segments, right? We're going to conduct an assessment as to how much control that from end-to-end process that SMA has. And we're going to ask the question of whether we'd be better off doing some partnerships along the way. So why does managing yourself matter? A lot of the world's great leaders, Napoleon, Da Vinci, Mozart, have always managed themselves. And that's what allowed them to kind of be successful. So what are the steps we need to do? First off, we need to do is figure out what are the strengths that we have. Second is, what is the context that I perform at best? Third is, what are my values and who am I? Fourth is, where do I belong? And here is where I'm going to call on AJ and Jock to give a little bit of word around the nature of some of the questions that you ask across the 9 dimensions of looking at yourself to understand what characteristics and what type of work environments do you work well in. Then we'll just briefly touch on contribution again. And then finally, managing one's time. which is really always a critical issue. And indeed, all right. So how do you manage yourself? First off, it takes time. It takes practice, the ability to have the discipline of putting away these large chunks of time, finding the right area where I like to focus my energy, putting myself in the right location to kind of be productive. It takes practice. It's not something you're going to learn overnight. It does require, going back to Shane's comment here, some reflection, some effort to think about what am I good at? What am I bad at? Where do I like to work? How do I like to work? It requires some real thinking about that. But it's going to make you're going to make your life a lot easier. You're going to be a hell of a lot happier if you're working on tasks that you're really good at and not working on a bunch of stuff that you don't want to work on. But it does require some real thought up front to put yourself in the right context to be able to be productive in that way. But it will serve you well over your career.
So as we learned in the class, leadership really plays a crucial role in fostering a customer-centric culture.
That's right.
You know, within an organization, any organization, and it starts with setting the right tone at the top and demonstrating a commitment
Absolutely.
to prioritizing the customer in every decision we make and that our associates make.
Leaders need to empower their team to take ownership of the customer experience and provide support and resources they need to succeed.
And additionally, leaders should lead by example by
Absolutely.
actively engaging with customers, soliciting feedback, and championing initiatives that drive customer satisfaction and loyalty.